Hey guys, I wanted to make this video to check out the Carbon custom ROM for the Nexus 5. Now, right now it is in nightly release stage, and what that means is it doesn't really have a full stable version for the Nexus 5. That being said, I've been running this for about 3 days now, and I haven't had any problems whatsoever. Now, it isn't actually fully finished yet either, so they're still actually adding features back in that other Carbon versions have on different devices. So things like Halo aren't in there yet, but it does have some really nice features that I want to talk about. For example, active display built in, Lockscreen notifications, and Pi controls. So yeah, let's go ahead and check that out. So the first thing I want to mention here is the theming. Now, we know KitKat has a black and white theme, but Carbon ROM takes that to a new level. If we dive into the settings, you'll notice the toggles are actually black and white instead of holo blue. And if we go into the battery graph, again, you'll notice the bars are white instead of that holo blue. And I just prefer that. I think it gives a more consistent and streamlined look to the entire OS. Okay, so let's move on to some customization here. And if you dive into the settings, you've got a section called personalization. Inside that, you've got carbon fibers, performance, and themes. Carbon fibers is the area where you're going to do the main bulk of your customization. So let's tap into that. You've got About Carbon at the top. It tells you a little bit about the ROM, and you can visit the website or donate to the Carbon dev. And then you actually have the customization options. So the first one we're going to talk about here is buttons. If we tap in here, you've got some options with your volume buttons. For example, keyboard cursor control, playback control, which is when the screen is off, long pressing the volume keys will seek music tracks. I think that's pretty awesome. Reorientate volume buttons and volume button wake. So pretty standard stuff right there. Next up, we've got device turnables. Now, for me, this is showing absolutely blank on the Nexus 5, so I'm not sure if it's just not implemented yet or if it's not available on the Nexus 5. So anybody in the comments that can tell me what's going on there can let me know. And we'll move on to interface. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So you've got a few tabs up here. The first one is general. You've got CRT animation, and this is when you turn your device off. You get that old school looking TV off animation that I think is really awesome. You can change that to don't show, collapse vertical, orientation dependent, and scale down. So if we just change it to scale down, I'll show you what that does. And you can see it kind of scales in and locks your device. We'll leave that to the horizontal because that's my favorite. And next up, we've got list view animation. Now, anyone that's used the Zui mod exposed module will know what the list view animation is. Basically, it allows you to change your list animation. So let's just change this, for example, to scale. We'll go to the settings and you'll see that it now changes the animation when things kind of appear in a list. Now, it's not quite as flexible as the exposed module. For example, you can change the interpolator, but you can't change the speed of it. So you're kind of stuck on that one track speed. So I'm just going to leave that on default for now. Expanded desktop mode is supported. You've got disabled, status bar visible, and status bar hidden. That's up to you. Swiping to the right, we've got recents panel, and the clear all position I've set to the bottom left. So if we go into the recents, you can see the clear all button right there. Basically, this option just allows you to move that around. You can have it off, top left, top right, or bottom right, and of course bottom left. Next up, we got lock screen. There's some pretty cool options in here. Probably most notable is the active display option. Now, this is built in. You don't need a separate app for this. If you know about the Motorola X, you'll know about active display. One thing to mention is the Nexus 5, of course, has an IPS display instead of a AMOLED display, so you probably are going to lose a little bit of battery life using this, although I have been using it, and yes, it does drain your battery life a little bit, but it's actually not too bad. Now, if you don't know what active display is, let me just show you. So right now I've got it on. We'll lock my device and I'll send myself an email so we can simulate a notification coming through, and just give it a second, and this is what active display is. And there we go, my notification has come through. You can see it's a Gmail. If we tap and hold this little circle area, you can actually read a little bit more about the notification up there. You can open Gmail by swiping to the left. You can unlock your device by swiping to the right, and you can just dismiss the notification by hitting this X, and it will lock the device and get rid of the notification. In terms of the options for active display, you've got things like pocket mode, which basically uses your device sensors to let it know when it's in a pocket or when it's taken out of a pocket. You've got notifications only or always, so when you take it out of your pocket, it's going to display active display and show you if you have any notifications. It's a cool little feature, but be aware, while I was using it, I did notice my battery did drain quite quickly, obviously because it was using all the sensors quite a lot of the time. Alternatively, you could turn that off and just have it to redisplay your notifications if you have any every 15 minutes. So that's pretty cool. If we swipe over, we've got nothing in the button section. If we swipe over again, we've got general. You can have the slider targets, shortcuts, theme style, battery status, see-through, so you can have your lock screen see-through, and you can also blur that if you want, and a slider torch as well. Now, I wanted to quickly get to this bit because this is probably one of my favorite features of Carbon ROM. It's lock screen notifications, and I think this is a great implementation. So let me just show you what these are before we actually talk about it. I've taken a screenshot to simulate a notification coming through, and if we turn on the display, you'll see a lock screen notification. Now, you can actually tap this to go straight into the gallery or whatever notification it is, or you can swipe it away if you don't want it anymore. One thing I really like about this implementation is if you have another notification, or if you just turn off the display now, you'll see it kind of collapses the notification to the right hand side, and you can just have them piled up on the right hand side here. And if you want to see what it is, you can just pull it out and see what it is. And if you don't want to deal with it right now, you can just drag it back over and it'll just sit there until you want to deal with it or until you swipe it away. Again, we've got some settings to mess around with here. For example, pocket mode, I mentioned what that was previously on active display. We've got wake up notification, hide low priority, hide non-clearable, all different things like that. Swiping over, we've got targets. This is pretty obvious what you can do. You can have lock screen targets here, so you can have different apps or certain actions. I'm not going to go through that because it's pretty obvious. Navigation bar section lets you obviously mess around with your navigation bar. For example, you can actually add buttons or rearrange the buttons. So you can add things like kill an app, and you can see it'll add that button there. Or you can actually add a custom app if you want to. So that's completely up to you. We also have, what else do we have in here? Ring targets. I actually have these set to torch, hibernate now, and kill app. You can see that there. So I just have to swipe up and get to those. I didn't really use Google Now, so I took that off. Dimensions, so you can actually kind of change the height and the width. So I actually have this a little bit smaller than default, just so I get that little bit more screen real estate. And we also have some advanced settings here: menu visibility, menu location, and show landscape. You can see you've got Pi built in, and it is Slim Pi. By default, it's actually huge. You can see it right here, but it's completely customizable. So you can change the buttons in the first layer and second layer. You can take away or add to your liking. In terms of style and dimensions, you've got things like the background color, the transparency, and also the navigation size. So it's a completely customizable Pi. You've also got the power menu, and that of course includes the reboot menu. So you can see my power menu right here. You can reboot into the recovery and bootloader. And lastly, we've got a status bar. Now, I'm not going to go through all these options because the video is getting a little bit long, but of course you have things like the battery icon. I've got mine set to percentage, but you've got all these other options. You can change the color, you can mess around with the clock. General settings, for example, the status bar brightness slider. I know that's a loved feature on any custom ROM. Double tap to sleep is included, so you can just double tap and your device will lock. And underneath that, you've got use 4G icon, show network speed, so it shows the up and download speed at all times. Turn that off right there. Notification drawer, you've got things like quick access ribbon in your notification drawer, so you can see that. You can have quick access to your brightness settings, and again, that's completely customizable. You can have it set to how you like. Quick settings, yes, you have things like quick pull down. You can change all the tiles as well, mess around with them, different sizes and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really feature-packed ROM. You've got things like performance here. You can mess around with kernel settings and also themes. There are some things I haven't mentioned. For example, in the sound, you've got CM's quiet hours. And if you go into display and lights, you actually don't need an app like Lightflow because that's completely included. You can have custom lights for different applications. That's a really awesome feature right there. And if you go into the brightness, you can also customize the automatic brightness as well. And it also has an option to adjust the sunrise and sunset. So a very feature-packed ROM here. If you're going to ask me about battery life, I believe by default it comes with the slim kernel. You can see that there, slim kernel. For me, it gets pretty much what you'd expect on the stock kernel. So pretty much stock battery life, probably 3 to 4 hours of screen on time, but it's AOSP based, so you can flash things like Franco or faux kernel without a problem. So yeah, definitely give it a shot. And of course, more features are being added all the time. So yeah, peace out.